So hi everybody, it's Adrian here from the People Network. Thanks for joining us today on what we hope will be a pretty informative and thought-provoking webinar that can give you some really good practical tips and examples that you can apply to your own unique situations. Appreciate everybody's got a different situation right now. Today's webinar is targeted towards managers, and whilst you can definitely apply the tips and the ideas and the principles from today directly for yourself, or maybe even pass up to someone who you report to for a business at large, the main focus is the support of employees as they face a new way of working due to impacts of things like COVID-19. Now, as I'm pretty sure everybody's aware, anyone that's on the webinar today can attest to, managing people can be really challenging, even at the best of times. Regardless of whether you've had lots of management, mentorship and training, or one day you just got thrown in the deep end and bang, you were a manager. Hopefully you found what works for you and your people, and you continue to do your best just to create a positive work environment and drive good outcomes. And just when you think you've got it all figured out and things are running smoothly and you're having a great time, bang, your teams change, people change. In more recent times, the world just flips the script on you, and people are having to work from home and in a lot of cases feeling separated and isolated and facing a unique set of challenges that they've never had to sort of face before. So what are you to do in a changing landscape where people work from home, and how do you manage them then? So we attempt to answer some key questions that have been thrown around lately, and that is, how do we communicate effectively with people? How do we instruct them, measure them? How do we keep them productive and performing and feeling motivated, feeling engaged, and feeling valued, still feeling part of a bigger business or a greater thing? So as part of that, today's webinar is going to be broken up into the following categories: communication, management, engagement, and health and wellness. I've pulled some really good people to help me today, and I'll quickly introduce all of those to you. On the line today, we've got Matilda Wand, Dan Ingwell, Sarah Morgan, Brad Dwyer, and Megan Hinchy. Matilda is a behavioural and strategist coach who delivers corporate and leadership workshops and retreats. She provides services across DISC behavioural analysis, neurolinguistics programming, timeline and matrix therapies, and life coaching. She's going to speak today about communication and talk through the 4 behavioural types and how they adapt to different situations and how to communicate with each type for best possible outcome. Dan is a training and development specialist who delivers a range of programs and workshops across sales, strategy, performance, leadership, engagement, and team and methodology development. And he's going to speak about management today to give us all some tips and ideas on how best to manage people remotely, to maximize performance and without micromanaging them. Sarah is a business coach who uses proven scientific assessment processes to help businesses understand and manage their employees with a real focus on productivity, profitability, and engagement. And she's certified across a multitude of behavioral, business, emotional, and mindset disciplines, and is well positioned to speak to us about employee engagement today. Brad is a Czech-trained holistic lifestyle coach, a corrective movement and exercise coach, an ASCA strength coach, and an LDOA practitioner. I feel a bit exhausted just even reading that out, Brad. He coaches individuals, groups, and businesses to educate them and help them improve their lives by having a better relationship with their bodies via the 6 foundations of health principles. Brad's going to speak to us today about health and wellness and just tap into a few key areas there for us. Megan is also a Czech-trained holistic lifestyle coach, a movement specialist, and a strength and conditioning coach. And she delivers both in-person and online coaching, training, and health programs. A mum with a 7-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 10-week-old baby, Megan is very aware of the different challenges working mums face and runs awesome pre- and postnatal conditioning sessions, as well as strength training and school fitness programs for girls. She's also going to speak about health and wellness today and provide some really good examples on how we can support our workforce with different programs and initiatives. So before we get into each of the categories, I just want to let you guys know that later in the webinar today, we do have a Q&A section. So if you have a question during the webinar, feel free to type it into your sort of chat window and we'll cover that off for you. There's a Q&A window there that you can type your stuff into. All right, so that's pretty much it from me. Let's get stuck into it. I will leave you in Matilda's capable hands. She's going to talk through communication. So over to you, Matilda.
Thank you, Adrian. So I will cover identifying the 4 behavioural styles and how we can adapt our communication, especially in these times of rapid change. Just jump onto the next slide for me there. Perfect, thank you. So the 4 styles have different prominent behaviours. The styles are dominant, influential, steady, and conscientious. So on the right side of the slide, we have the dominant and influential, which are both fast-paced and very direct in their communication, which means they speak loud and fast and make direct eye contact. On the left side of the slide, we have the steady and conscientious, which are slower paced and indirect, meaning they won't look at you directly in the eye as much, they may speak softer, and also will be speaking at a slower pace. The top line in the slide represents the D and C, which are both guarded in their communications, which means they won't speak just for the sake of speaking. They are more focused on the task and speak more for significance rather than connection. The bottom IS styles are open communicators. So you will notice the open body language, warmer tones, and they're more focused on the people side of things. So they're the ones that really love these webinars when we can't have the usual connections right now. Something is better than nothing. So to quickly recognize another person's style, you can ask the 2 questions. So question number 1 is, are they direct or indirect in their communication, which either makes them a D and I for direct or for an indirect an S and C. Then the second question is, are they guarded or open in their communication, which either makes them the guarded D and C or open I and S. So just by asking these 2 questions, you'll be able to differentiate the 4 styles. But it does take a little practice and there is a much easier way, which I'll tell you about soon. So let's talk about adaptability. So adaptability is based on 2 elements, flexibility and aptitude. Flexibility is your willingness and aptitude is your capability to adjust your approach or strategy based on the particular needs of the situation or relationship at a particular time. So it's something you must cognitively choose to apply to yourself, to your patterns, attitudes, or habits, and not really expect from others. So we practice adaptability each time we slow down perhaps for a C or S style, or when we move a bit faster for the D and I style. It also occurs when the D or C style takes the time to build the relationship with an S or I style, or when the I or S style focuses on facts or gets right to the point with the D and C styles. So adaptability does not mean an imitation of the other person's style. It does mean just adjusting your openness, directness, pace, and priority in the direction of the other person's preference, whilst maintaining your own identity. So adaptable people know how to negotiate relationships in a way that allows everybody to win. So your adaptability level influences how others judge their relationship with you. So by raising your adaptability, it will increase trust and credibility. And if you lower your adaptability, trust and credibility will decrease. So being more adaptable enables you to interact more productively with difficult people or in difficult situations. And it helps you to avoid or manage tense situations as well. So to communicate with each of the styles, when we are confronted with different situations at work, the different styles will predictably behave in certain ways. So with the uncertainty and rapid changes that we've recently undergone, we can predict what each of these styles needs support with. Cool, huh? So how do we adapt to our communication style? So with the Ds, you really want to be listening to their suggestions, their course of action and the results that they're considering. You really want to agree with them and make them feel like they're winning. You can even work backwards towards gaining an agreement on the results you both want. When you're communicating with the I styles, you want to listen to their personal feelings and experiences. Their style requires open and responsive interaction with people. And it's really important to make them feel liked and having them really engaged at a time, especially when they're not able to talk to everybody in the office right now. The S styles, you need to really be listening a lot more to them so that they don't feel comfortable. They don't feel comfortable with the limelight on them. So make sure that you're engaging with them in a way that's meaningful to them. So by slowing your pace down, clarifying anything with them, speaking to them in a way that's quite calm, and just making sure that you're actually listening to their needs. The S styles are the first to be too willing to overachieve for things or put their hand up for things that they actually may not even have time for. With the C styles, you need to be very well organized and clear in your communications. So they're the ones that are searching for logical conclusions, and they hate to be wrong. So make sure that you can put them in a situation where you're being adaptable in the communication with them if there's something critical that you need to bring up with that particular style. So I'd really like to have a look at a comparison now. And we've got an example here of two different disc profiles side by side in a report that we have done previously. Adrian, would you like to cover this one that we did for a client?
Sorry there, I'm busy talking and I forgot to unmute myself. Good one. Thank you for that, Matilda. So this is a really good example. So we were recruiting a really important role for a client of ours. We'd narrowed it down to two pretty impressive guys. I'd facilitated the interviews directly with the client, so in-house with him, and I personally thought that either guy could have nailed the role. I thought they were really similar in person, in their personality style. They had similar experience in education, and they both interviewed really well. So we're a little bit unsure what to do. So we decided to do a disc assessment on both guys, and Matilda then ran through the results for the client. So the report is really detailed. This is literally one slide of potentially a 40+ page document. So there's lots of great information in it, but this just shows the comparison on the two guys' profiles. And as you can see, they are actually very, very different. So Matilda, can you just briefly explain the key differences between the two guys in relation to how they would make decisions and communicate and manage that high pressure and stressful sort of project that we had them interviewing for?
Yeah, definitely. So candidate A is more likely to be suitable for a support role, as he's really people focused and at slower pace, whilst candidate B is naturally faster paced, decisive, and has more predictably more management capabilities for rapidly changing and high stress environments. So it doesn't mean that they both can't adapt, but what happens is when they fall into their natural roles where they can naturally do the things that they're good at, it takes less energy. So predictably, it's going to be better for candidate B to be in that role. So having their individual reports side by side is such a great way to really see the differences in our staff. So these reports have been used not only to choose candidates, but to increase the collaboration and communication in current staff and find natural motivators and stresses and bring awareness to the different styles to bring a level of tolerance, acceptance, and adaptability into this working culture so that we can actually choose the right people for the roles or identify where people are getting stressed. Does that cover everything there, Adrian?
Yeah, thank you for that. So I guess just to add to that, before the actual disc assessment, I was actually leaning towards candidate A, and I thought the client was as well. I thought that's the direction he'd go. And after going through the profiles and having that consultation with Matilda, the client elected to go with candidate B, and the result was he definitely employed the right guy. The guy is excelling on the project, and in the last 12 months, he's really shown as one of my client's best employees, so much so that, we're going to be getting him to do some more assessments so that we can use him as the benchmark for some of the candidate screening stuff that we're going to do around motivators and drivers and stuff like that. So Sarah's going to talk about motivators and drivers a bit more later on today. So from a communication standpoint, that's just a couple of quick examples. So thank you, Matilda, for that. And that leads us into Dan, who's going to talk about management. So over to you, Dan.
Thanks, Adrian. Thanks, Matilda, for the introductions and setting us up with some of that thinking. So look, I'd love to sort of pick up really from where Matilda left off in terms of like the fact that we're remote from our employees and they're remote from one another and from their, you know, customers or other interactions, means that we absolutely want to be able to reflect on how they like to behave and do stuff and be able to be a better manager for them, you know, in knowing that. So I'm always fascinated when I hear Matilda speak about some of those behavioural elements, and I'm often challenged in how do I then adapt my management style and my management approach to be able to get the most out of my employees. So I really wanted to pick that up and start challenging us in how we would normally do things in, I guess, what's becoming known as the old normal, as we start to be able to be excellent managers in this new normal, however long this may last. So we've talked a lot with clients now about what the role of the manager is, and effectively that falls into, say, 5 categories, which aren't called out in the slide, but I just sort of list them out real quick. And we need to think about this based on things like the behavioural style of our employees as individuals. Are we there to motivate them? Are we there to help them focus because that's a challenge for them? Are we there to help them execute and be really productive? Are we there to advise them on how they should be doing things differently in this different environment? Or are we there to develop them into better workers and employees and potentially managers themselves? And of course, the answer is we want to try and be able to do all of those things. And so, whereas in the past we could measure and manage them in a traditional sort of way, that becomes a lot more difficult for us to do when we can't connect with them physically as we normally would. So that means that we're talking a lot more about or we're being much more conscious of the cadence and rhythm of the interactions we have with them. So typically, we would make sure, and we do this in a remote environment, we would check that we're doing team meetings and one-on-one meetings, for example, in a remote space. I imagine some of you guys are having either daily huddles on joint mobile phone calls or Zoom calls, or using a technology to get together, Skype or something, to get together on a daily call, a weekly call. That's all very good stuff. You're possibly also having individual one-on-ones with your people as well. Also a very good thing. And we've adjusted the rhythm that we do that, and we're learning about how that works best for us. Where that comes in ever more important is when we think about the cadence and the rhythm, we often think about the team meetings, the one-on-one meetings. I'm also now encouraging people to think about how often are your people talking to each other. So as well as the team, as well as the one-on-one with you, it's about how often are they talking to one another. And if they're not doing it naturally, how can we get that to happen and encourage that and kind of make that happen? So that's the extra piece of the cadence. And then we start thinking about what sorts of conversations are easier or harder because of the environment that we're in. And if we've established a way where people can talk about each other, that helps us in the feedback loop as we ask one employee how they think another employee is actually doing in a kind of open environment. It enables us to establish that feedback loop, which is much more natural when we're physically engaging with them. We can see whether they seem a bit happy or sad or slouchy or a bit down in the dumps today, or somebody else notices it and tells us it as we're passing them along the corridor. So all that stuff we have to kind of make happen now. That enables coaching and mentorship to happen, not only coaching from us, but mentorship between each other. Because what I've tended to find is that people within teams are talking to each other on the phone when I'm not there. And they're talking about all sorts of stuff, including about me. So I want to leverage that and make that a positive, good conversation. And I want to be able to review performance with them on a reasonably regular basis in my one-on-ones with them, using the information I've gathered from the team meetings and my evidence from the meetings they're having with one another. So that creates a whole kind of slightly different routine of conversations that I'm having as a manager because of the different environment everyone finds themselves in. And so so that spread of conversations enables me to be able to be as good, if not a better manager than I was, keep establishing trust and accountability, and be able to kind of assess the nature of the connection that I've got and what that is doing for their ability to perform and to know they're performing at a good level. So if we click onto the next slide and sort of take that through from, what's the nature of my connection with them, and how is their performance doing? If you take a typical model of performance where you've got some people in the green performing really well, some people in the amber or yellow there performing averagely, and a few at the bottom performing badly, then many of us have found that in a remote working environment, some of these things are becoming exposed. And we might be finding that different people, different to what we might have expected, are performing better or worse as a result of the environment that we're in. So my question becomes, what happens when somebody's performance dips from either green to amber, from top to middle, or from amber to red, from middle to bottom? And what can we do about that? Because depending on how many people are in your team, it's very unlikely you can coach every member of your team really, really well. So as many of us have found, you have to pick and choose the people you're going to coach. And rather than coach the people who are already in the green, most people almost automatically go to the people in the amber and start coaching the people around the middle to get better. There's nothing wrong with that. But when we're stressed for time and in a different environment, my guidance is now to choose someone who's performing really, really badly and take that person and intensively coach them with additional mentorship from other team members and help them leapfrog the middle right up to the green section. Which requires quite a bit of work and focus on our part, but works wonders for the whole team environment. So let me tell you a little bit about what I mean. So if we click onto the next slide, in order to leapfrog this, I'm asking managers to consider, what is it about that employee who is now performing badly in this new remote world, or is doing badly as a result of it? They've dipped from the middle section to the bottom section on that previous slide. What was it about them that got them the job? What is it about them that made them a good worker at one stage in the past? It's likely to be one or more of these traits that are up on the screen here: traits, attitudes, and that sort of thing. So I'm inviting managers to run a diagnosis where you take the employees whose performance has dipped and lowered as a result of the COVID-19 crisis in the remote working environment, and run through a diagnosis by filling out a form a little bit like this. Did they have this trait once? Do they know about it? Did they used to show it? Can they show it now? And that enables us to choose somebody to coach. So if we move on to the next slide, we can get a bit more information then, depending on the environment that you're in, the industry that you're in. If I was working with you, say, to select a coaching mechanism for your team, we'd run through a few questions and figure out, is this person's dip in performance a result of a lack of knowledge on their part, or skill on their part, or desire on their part to get something done? So having done that, that would kind of validate the individual who would be the standout individual who, and this is an important one, it's an individual who does possess the traits that will enable them to be successful, but is currently not able to put those traits into action and make those turn into a performance. So it's absolutely somebody who's got the traits, but who's unable to perform is the person that we're going to choose to coach. And if we move on to the next slide, if that's all right, then we challenge ourselves to embark on a coaching program with that individual. And what I tend to find is, by having additional one-on-one sessions over the telephone or whatever mechanism you're using to communicate with that person, does a number of things. It shows them that you care about them and want them to improve. And because they're also talking to the other team members about what's going on and how they're all being managed, they all know they all know for certainty how many times each of them are meeting with you and how long each of those meetings are and what the nature of those meetings or calls are. So remember, I'm encouraging them to talk to each other. I'm now certain that they're talking to each other about how often they're meeting. And so the one of them who knows they're being coached knows they're being coached more than anyone else. Some then think they're being performance managed. They can think whatever they like. There's a good bit of knowledge out there amongst the team that somebody's getting some attention and others are not. And now, using some of Matilda's ideas and my knowledge of them and how they like to be treated, I'm going to challenge myself to coach them in a way that's going to work best for them to improve their performance. And I'm going to embark on an intensive coaching time. And now remember, while I'm doing this, I'm kind of almost ignoring my green people at the top. I'm not ignoring them, but I'm having a very quick weekly one-on-one with them that's in my calendar for half an hour, but it only actually takes 10 minutes. It's how are you doing? Yeah, I'm good. You're still performing great. Off you go. And I'm actually then devoting much more time to the individual who I'm doing my coaching focus on. So it's that person, they have the traits, they're just unable to perform. They get all of my attention and everybody else knows about it. So there's some guidelines I've put on the slide here about, how long it lasts and how many sessions a week, the mechanisms or techniques you might use to do that, management mechanisms about observing and feedback about doing do's or testing commitments and all that sort of thing, which again, we can go into more detail on in any future sessions. And effectively, we're looking to embark on this kind of new process in this new world in a virtual way to enable performance of the whole team to raise. So in closing, I'll actually sort of tell you a little bit about a company that's been doing this over the last month. And this is an organization with a sales team and the team, the leader of one of the teams of the 4 teams has embarked on doing this. This guy's got, let's call him Nick, he's got too many people to coach them all, so he's decided on the one to coach, started coaching that person. Everybody kind of knows that's happening. Now, this person's performance is improving, and guess what that's doing? It's raising the bar for the entire team. Because that person's moving from red to green, from low to top, the people in the middle are all looking at each other and go, God, who's the next person who's going to drop down into the green? Who's the next person who's going to drop down? I don't want it to be me. I want to be up there in the green. So they're all improving their own abilities to perform and mentoring and coaching each other. So Nick's doing quite a lot of coaching with one person and enabling the rest to coach each other to success. And everybody's performance is improving. So he's chosen that and been very focused in the way he's doing that for getting his team to really up their game. So happy to take any questions on the chat as we go on. I'm very conscious of time as well. I wanted to really use that to help us think about, those sorts of practices might help us if we can engage with our team and make sure we're engaging with them at the right level. And so Sarah, I know you're on the line and keen to talk to us about how to engage best with the teams. And so I'd love to hand that over to you if that's okay.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. And thanks, Matilda. Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Morgan, and I'm going to show you how you can be engaging your remote team from a point of understanding their personal drivers and motivations. Firstly, I want you to think about how are you planning on surviving for the next 6 months? Are you planning to survive, or are you going to try and thrive through this crisis? Because the actions that you take now will affect your organisation and when you return. The way you manage, the way you communicate, and the way you engage your teams is what's going to be remembered. The last 3 weeks, we've been having conversations and getting feedback from leaders, business owners, and their staff from all industries and companies and organisations. And mostly, they're positive. They're feeling they're going to get through this. They're just putting their business on the norm hiatus for now. But we've actually spoken to your staff, and we've got inside their mindset, and we've understood their feelings and what they're actually dealing with internally. And some of them are guilt from loss of productivity. Some of these people, it's their first time they've ever had to work from home. So it's a huge change for them. Time management is a major issue. It causes stress. One of the conversations I've had more than once is people are having dreams of driving down a hill in a car and the brakes don't work. This is the first time people in business are having lack of control. They're not in control of what they're able to do. So what's keeping you up at night? What we're going to talk about is the good economic foundations and culture. To have good economic culture is to have good economics. Without good culture, you can't have good economics. And these are the foundations of culture. We teach our organisations and we show them how to keep up their engagement. It's keeping up your employees on task and keeping them focused, but not just for business sake, but for engagement and for your business culture. Building trust builds trust in you. Right now, with all the stress that people are feeling, trust is depleted. Unfortunately, stress actually depletes trust. It's about building relationships. People don't necessarily know how to build a relationship now that it's remote. How do you build relationships online? How do you do it without personal presence? How do you manage behavior? You know, a lot of companies have their KPIs set and they're driven behavior by their KPIs. But how do you do that now without micromanaging from a distance? Now that they're at home. We're talking about communication with Matilda, and she's touched on about the different styles, and there's different ways of communicating. And people need to hear things in their style to build that trust. But at the moment, it's about alignment of purpose and vision and values. Before, it was really easy for your employees to understand where they stood in the company. But at the moment, they're not understanding how their vision and values, how their life goals and career goals fit into this remote where we are now. So before COVID-19, you used to build engagement by hosting meetings. At the meetings, your staff would chit-chat in before and after and during, have little jokes in between. You would be able to set up the context of your culture and of your business at a boardroom, in a boardroom meeting. You would host social interactions, possibly drinks once a week or on Friday nights, or have bowling sessions, or have the office birthday cake. You would be able to recognize and reward your people publicly, which is a huge part of building that engagement in your culture. You used to be able to have training sessions together, get a team together and get them to be educated and learning and growing as a leadership together. Creating a team experience was a great way to build engagement and trust. But all of this has changed now. Now more than ever, it's important to understand what motivates your workforce. The great thing about it is the motivations I'm talking about are actually in that DISC report that we've just been discussing in the last 2 sessions. So it's nothing new, but it is about understanding how they work together. I'm going to touch on a little bit further and understand how people work with their preferred styles. But I'm talking about the way people need to be motivated to be productive, to better time management and to communicate. It's not just about doing 2 phone calls a day or 1 every second day. That doesn't work as a blanket approach. It has to be individualized based on their behavior and their style that they need. If you do it too often, you're actually going to jeopardize their trust. And if you don't do it enough, you actually might alienate someone. So by developing a personal development plan, a leadership journey based on their drivers and motivators, you're actually going to build trust and culture and engagement. And the benefit of doing that is you're going to build loyal, qualified leaders in your business for when you return to full operation and capacity. In this plan, we will create challenges. This is different form of stress based on individual results. The challenges actually build trust, give responsibility, and let them know that you do trust them to be working at home. When you know someone's drivers and motivators, you can personalize what work you give them and how you build relationship. There are 12 drivers and motivators. People usually have a clear top 2 to 4. These are why people do what they do. Behavior is how they do it, but drivers are why they do it. People are not simply just motivated by money. They have a purpose. They have career goals. They have life goals. How their role in your business is fulfilling for them. And now it's changed. For example, we have a staff member, very high I very high S&I, and really enjoys being around people, but now they're home alone. They are struggling to stay on their work and stay on task. With their manager and doing their psychometrics, we understand that one of their highest drivers is actually intellect, which means how are they going to get that now at home? We look at what was their behavior before. They would stick their head in the office of their manager and ask questions and learn and get their knowledge from that. But now we needed to develop a purposeful education plan so that we are still meeting that person's why. Intellect is sharing expertise and learning. Depending on the different motivators, people react differently to team trainings. Now, one of the biggest things we notice at the Cooler Chats, which used to think that that was unproductive, but it actually is part of people's motivators for being at work. Another driver can be status. How do you show status or get status while you're working remotely? How do we come up with a plan for them to be able to feel that why? Altruistic is another motivator. One example we had is an organisation. We recognised that was a motivator for quite a number of their staff. Their staff happen to be millennials, but I don't know if that's related. We'll have to do some more testing on that. But apart from that, it's about having a plan. And what we did for that organisation is develop charity and pro bono work within their company. It meant that their staff had purpose for being there. They wanted to be part of the community. They wanted to be able to give back to their charity that they were involved with. On a plus note, it also attracted people of that caliber to the business, and it became the employer of choice for people that had that similar driver. The 12 drivers in everyone are a combination. Just like the behaviour styles, it's a combination. We can develop a plan keeping in mind your style, your behaviour, and what motivates and keeps your employees focused and engaged. So what are the proactive steps that you're going to take to keep your employees engaged, motivated, and productive focused whilst working remotely? Keeping your employees engaged, motivated, and productive focused will take a plan. But the rewards are a great economic culture, innovations that you hadn't yet thought of, and creatively solving problems. It really is the human-to-human approach. Thank you, everyone. I'm Sarah Morgan. Coming up, I think we now have Brad.
Yep, I'll hand over to you, Brad. Thanks, mate. Hang on a second, Brad. We might want to unmute, I think, on that one.
Hi, guys, and thank you very much for that introduction. Thank you. Brad Dwyer is my name. I'm a holistic lifestyle and movement coach, and I've got a focus with my clients, the people I work with, on balancing their mental, emotional, and physical and spiritual elements, just to create an individual balance for their health and well-being. And what we're finding currently with people working from home or remotely are the challenges and the impacts that that's having on both the physical and the mental health of people. So it's probably more important now than ever that we look at a focus around the mental and physical health, and as managers try to come up with some solutions to support and get our employees some help in those areas. I'm going to speak about the 6 foundations of health today, and I'm going to go into a little bit more detail around movement and why that's so important. So for everyone who's not familiar with the 6 foundation principles, this is how they look. So first up, we have thoughts. So your thoughts shape you, and you become what you think. So thoughts lead to words, and then healthy thoughts make healthy bodies. Second, we've got breathing. So this is quite important. Everyone does breathe, we hope, 20 to 40,000 times a day. It's a lot. So if there's an imbalance or some sort of dysfunction with the breathing, we're going to start to see disease, we're going to see pain. And I think without an understanding of how to breathe correctly, We see things like stress increase. We see postural imbalances. And then I think the long term is that dramatic increase, the dramatic increase in the quality of life. Next is hydration. So I think the majority of people that I work with or realize in the world are probably not having enough water. And it's not about how much you drink, it's about the quality. So there's a little thing, little checkism that I'd use is called dilution is the solution to pollution, which is something I'll leave you with. Food is up next, or nutrition, whichever way you'd like to look at it. And that's again about quality and quantity. So we need to aim to have things like fresh food, if we can, eat organic wherever possible and as often as possible. And again, it's about only putting into our bodies what we want to get out of our bodies. It's a one body, it's a one lifetime principle. Movement is so important, and that's next. We become sedentary the more and more we are overwhelmed with our work. The more sedentary we become, the more overweight we become. And that leads us to be out of tune with our body and what our body needs. And our body needs movement. We're nomadic. We're designed to move. So the quality of our movement is a must. Thinking about things like a corrective mobility program to look at balancing out any indifferences that are caused by lifestyle and habits that you will do and be in a day-to-day basis. Lastly, we have sleep. We need to master the art of sleep. So learning how to sleep 8 hours in a day, that's a minimum. It should be the priority of people. If you can't fall asleep at night, then maybe we need to look at that. And then look at other concepts like blue light and things like melatonin and how we can improve the sleep hormone serotonin. Now, I think to give you guys an example of how we can tie all these principles together, one example is an organization that we work with that had about 50 employees working around 3 different sites. We ran this workshop for over 6 weeks, and this entailed a webinar. It's a detailed look at the 6 foundation principles that we're speaking about now briefly. We looked at goal setting, we looked at accountability for their staff. There was a Q&A section that we rolled out, and then an ebook that they tied everything else into. From the Q&A, we were sort of blown away by the responses that we're getting from people that didn't really have a concept about their long-term well-being. It's kind of alarming. So the implementation of the 6 foundation principles, along with the other concepts that we rolled out to the clients, we saw some fantastic feedback from their employees. So there was a greater engagement with their employer, and there was a greater proactivity as a result from the staff. As I mentioned before, movement is such an important factor, and it's something that for such a top line overview, we need to probably jump into that a little bit more. So what's involved in our programs? So one thing getting into movement is everyone's at home at the moment. Everyone's working from their makeshift desk, some sort of office or even a lounge, their laptop. So I know people like Adrian. Adrian's sitting at his kitchen table, and that's his office now. I know that his back has felt better. He probably could look at things like being more mindful about his desk setup, looking at his ergonomics. He could stretch more. He could move more. So I think there's definitely considerations as managers that we need to know that our employees are working in a different environment now. We don't have much control over that, so it's quite important. I think the biggest thing that to come from this and the feedback that we're getting is the functional pain, the postural issues, all from this incorrect ergonomic setup. We've got our staff sitting in poor positions for long periods of time, and this is obviously having a detriment to their employees' health. So movement is all about reducing anxiety, really. It's great for stress reduction and depression. It helps people make better and more informed decisions regarding their health. Moving constantly and consistently helps improve cognitive function and having a positive mindset. Now, when we roll this all into an employee scenario, they're all working from the lounge rooms or the spare bedrooms, whatever the scenario. An example that we can provide is from a recent movement workshop we did with some clients. This involved some group training and coaching. So we did this via Zoom. So it's lots of fun if you haven't done that. We ran team initiatives across these classes, and the company will also put their employees through a paid one-on-one consultation, a session, where I was talking with clients about their movement goals, talking about the individual challenges, and what they needed to be doing. So we prescribed suitable and individual movement and lifestyle programs for each member. So it's quite important. And I think when you're dealing with this sort of severity, it's got to be an individual approach. The program's now, I think, about halfway through, and the positive feedback that's coming in from the staff that have been involved is quite fantastic. We've got a direction that they're working in now, and they're all very motivated towards the bigger picture. So I think our goal as coaches, to work with employees that have a better understanding of the type of movement that suits them best for employees, and sort of to have a good understanding of the choices that they're making for their long-term health and wellness. I'm going to now hand over to the wonderful Megan, and she's going to cover some further aspects that I think you'll find interesting, definitely, and maybe to consider. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Brad. I've just got a baby that's woken up right on cue, so just bear with me if you hear a bit of background noise here. But yeah, thanks, Brad. My name's Megan Hinchy, and I suppose I want to sort of stem from some of the principles that Brad's just outlined for you guys, particularly on the 6 foundations of health. And I'd love to jump into one of those foundations of health that he just spoke to you about, that being food or nutrition, and just go into that in a little bit more depth. Before I do, though, I really feel called to preface this next bit with us all acknowledging that we're not just talking about working remotely, yeah? We're talking about people who are working in self-isolation in times of unprecedented stress. So this isn't a usual situation. And I think we really need to acknowledge that, because it might seem trivial at a time like this to teach people about food and weight management, and like Brad talked about, movement and healthy lifestyle practices like the 6 foundations of health that he went through. But this time in history will be a source of huge stress and anxiety for many people. And I suppose what we eat or how we move, sleep, breathe, think is all going to have huge impacts on the digestive system, people's nervous system, and people's immune system. So if we can understand that this is quite a different circumstance for people to be thrown into, and that lack of control or uncertainty or feeling overwhelmed, the stress, anxiety, the pressures, the fact they're working from home now with perhaps babies on them like me, is all going to really equate to a high aptitude of stress than what it would usually. So this is really crucial stuff if you want more productivity, engagement, and I think a more confident attitude from employees. Now, what are a couple of things, or what are a couple of solutions that we've tried and tested, not only over the course of the last 10 years, but especially of late, that you guys can implement? I'll sort of walk you through or briefly explain 2 solutions that we've found have worked really well, bearing in mind that everything's virtual at the moment and not face-to-face. One online workshop that we've run that had really great feedback was actually teaching people how to plate up and how to prepare nourishing meals, not just nourishing food, but what a meal should look like to sustain them and energize them and help their cognitive function. This might seem really obvious, and people are probably like, I know how to plate up a meal. It's not that hard. I'll just have some chicken breast and some salad, or we all know how to eat healthy. But the fact is that's not actually true. 3 out of 10 people aren't confident in their food choices. So there's massive internal conflict when it comes to people preparing and choosing foods to eat. And even people who eat healthy have a real lack of knowledge in portion sizes. And I think these findings of recent studies are consistent with what we see in our business with clients as well. Not only that, so you've got 3 out of 10 people who aren't confident about their food choices. You've got 80% of people who are unsure how to connect their food choices or that correlation between what they're eating and specific health outcomes. And this is where we get this presenteeism you'll see on this slide here. It's like you've got employees that are rocking up to work, they're showing up, they're behind their laptop, they're attending meetings, they're doing the do, but are they performing optimally? And this is how food and how they're nourishing their body can really, truly impact this. And I think too, bearing in mind, we've got people that are out of their normal routines. Brad touched on that. And our world is changing. So if our routines are changing, our world is changing. How we cook, how we source our foods, and how we relate to food is changing as well. You'll have clients who would have, employees who would have perhaps, grabbed toast and a coffee on their way into the office. So they didn't prepare breakfast. That's if they even eat breakfast. Or they'll leave their computer and go out and duck out and grab lunch and then come back and sit at their computer. So there's probably a high chance that they don't even actually prepare or cook most of their meals in a day. And now all of a sudden, their kitchen and their homes are becoming this hub of potential creativity, health, and maybe even connection with other members of their family as well. You can see here on this slide that this is just a little snapshot from the online webinar that we run. It's really practical. So it's basically getting them super hands-on. They are prepping and preparing a meal in real time with me, guiding them, because they have access. We all have access in this technology age to so much information, all the dietary do's and don'ts. This is a good food, that's a bad food. Don't eat carbs, don't eat It's so much information, it's information overload. All of that's passive information though, until you get people to do it and jump that barrier from just reading or sitting on their butt watching a webinar and not really taking the action and that direct application of how to plate up a meal using our build a meal plan methodologies. Another really good example of something that has worked really well is our 21-day whole food cleanses. I would say this has probably been our most popular solution to a lot of nutrition and lifestyle challenges that people have. And we run these as group programs. So there's a real meaning behind that. We've found a lot more success in running group programs or company-wide programs rather than just having a nutrition program that someone follows by themselves. So either their family gets involved or their colleagues get involved and they have that sense of, community and common goals, and also the workplace really supporting their health and wellness goals. So there's a sense of loyalty that really starts to happen with employees back to the company when they feel supported in this way as well. A huge issue at the moment when people are working remotely or specifically in isolation, and even more specifically from home, is that their kitchen is right there and there's no one to scrutinize their eating habits. We have clients, and we ask this across several questionnaires that Brad touched on, where we really start to seek more understanding of when they're stressed, do they overeat or do they undereat? And you might recognize these behaviors in yourself. We can really start to binge eat when we're experiencing huge stress or anxiety or overwhelm. Not only that, but Brad mentioned they're out of their normal routine, they're not moving. So how does that then impact that sort of stuff? They've got their kids at home, their family at home. So now is the time to really provide support when these challenges and this transition, this change is most overwhelming for the majority of individuals. If we can use these 21-day whole food cleanse programs to give them some real structure, some stimulus, and definitely some inspiration, we want to try and act as a circuit breaker to stop employees from thinking, oh, screw it, I can't go to the gym, what's the point in moving? Oh, screw it, no one's going to see me eat half this cake, what does it really matter? So we want to really engage them and support them and inspire them as a collective. So it's not just a personal trainer like me standing in front of them telling them to eat healthy and they're like, oh, she's a personal trainer, it's easy for her. They're doing it with everyday people just like them. So they can lean into, they can lean on, and they can really learn from each other as well. So it's a community-driven program. If you as a workplace environment can not only identify these health challenges that they're going to be having, they will be facing, you identify and you acknowledge these challenges for them, and also really inspire their health goals amongst the current climate and take action to provide that lifeline, then you could be one of the standout companies that really, truly are promoting a positive, confident culture that's focused on health. And again, like Sarah mentioned, we're not thinking just in the here and now, we're thinking 6 months from now. We don't want employees burning out. We want them to, if anything, being more healthy than they ever will be. Adrian, I'm going to hand it back to you now so you can wrap up. Thanks, guys.
Great, thanks for that, Megan. That definitely makes me feel a little guilty for eating 2 cupcakes this morning before this webinar. Just stopping myself in there. That leads us to the Q&A side of today. We've got some time dedicated for that, and I've actually seen there's been a number of questions come through during the webinar, and we've tried to answer some of those during that, and there's some questions there for us to go through now. If you have something that you want to ask about anything that you've seen today, feel free to type it in now. There's a Q&A window that you can tap into, and we'll try and get to that if we've got time. So the first question that I'll read out, it's about more about engagement, I guess. So I'll throw this out to you, Sarah, please, if you want to answer this. The question is, how can I tell who in my team is engaged and who isn't?
Hey, yeah, thanks, Adrian. Look, we do have wellbeing assessments. Like at this time, it's really important to first check, are your employees okay? You know, it's great that they can do work at home, but like I had said throughout my presentation, there's other things underlying that can be challenging for them right now. So let's just first of all ask if they're okay. One of the things, tools that we have available to us is an assessment. It's a wellbeing assessment that is a short assessment which provides actually specific data for your organisation. It provides customised insights so that you can understand where they are currently with their wellbeing. And then we actually provide you strategies to help them to provide relevant support. Some of the insights can be around stress, resilience, time management, connection, self-awareness. So they're really important when you're providing that relevant support. I hope that helps, Adrian.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, cool. Thanks for that. Now, the next question is about immune system. So, Megan, if you want to unmute yourself again, sorry, you've just finished your section. But so from a health and wellness perspective, how can I easily boost my immune system? Can you answer that one for me?
Yes. Do you want the long answer or the short answer? Because I could give you another hour webinar.
Short one.
I'll give you the short one. The short one is, I guess, really appreciating and understanding in greater detail the 6 foundations of health that Brad and I have touched on and mentioned. We pulled from the 6 foundations of health, and we run a webinar specifically on the the top 5 immune suppressants. So what's really going to suppress an individual's immune system, and the top 5 immune boosters. And look, if an individual wants to take that further, if they're doing those things and ticking those boxes, then you would just go into further diagnostics to get transparency over what's happening in their body, maybe at a cellular level, and understanding why. That's the short answer.
Okay, thank you very much. My old favourite DISC. I love a bit of DISC profiling. Matilda, question to you is, I wouldn't have a clue what DISC style my staff are. How do I find that out? Is it easy?
Yeah, it is. Well, it's easy if you're doing it on your own. It's hard if you're doing it on your own, but it's very easy if you do the report. So it took me months and months of really learning to really pinpoint other people's behavioural types. Now I can do it quite easily, but I always find the best and easiest way is to do a report. So to do that, it's a 15 to 20 minute questionnaire online. It's about 24 questions. And it generates a report of about 46 pages instantly so that you can receive this, and you can choose if you want your employees or staff to receive this. You get a copy, we get a copy, and then you can have a debrief of that as well so that you understand it. But that report has so much information, and I'm hoping we can actually add a sample in so that everybody on this webinar can actually download a sample report, which would be absolutely amazing.
Yeah, we'll definitely be able to do that when we send the information out to everybody after this. So thank you for that. Dan, if you're there, mate, there could be one here for you around productivity. How can you realistically get productivity when people work from home without micromanaging them? Sounds like a question from a true micromanager.
Yeah, I think that is a great question, because the instinctive thing is to increase the number and length of one-on-one meetings that you have with them, and that's not actually a way to improve productivity necessarily. So I would absolutely mix up establishing a mentor, a peer-to-peer mentor for that person or those individuals to talk to one another and learn from each other. And to give them some time in team meetings as well as increasing one-on-one. So productivity will be a mix of at least 3 or 4 different types of communication rather than just the one.
Okay, thank you, mate. Health and wellness question. Brad, if you're there, if you'd like to answer this one, mate. I don't have any gym equipment, so what is an effective way for me to work out from home?
Okay, it's a great question, and something that comes up a lot, and something that we work with a lot of our clients with. And the first thing I'd probably say to that is there's always a way. You can always do something depending on your level, depending on what history you've got with moving or sports or lack of or none at all. That's fine. There's always a way to do something. I think it's utilizing whatever you've got. So, I mean, if you've never done anything, so body weight is a great way to start. And having some good structure around that is quite simple. You don't really need much more than a 2 meter square area to be moving. It's something that you can do with minimal equipment. You might have some books, put in a backpack to add some extra load, and just put the backpack on. Really easy. You might use a portable water bottles, but you don't need a big space. You don't need much. It's just sort of maybe having a little bit of direction or I suppose stimulus in what type of things that you could actually be doing, and then that opens up the floodgates to so many more possibilities.
Okay, thank you, mate. I'm very conscious of time, guys. So that'll probably be our last question for the webinar today, but there are actually a number of questions sitting there for us that we didn't get to answer. So what we'll do is I'll get those questions out to the team and get some answers and send that all out to all of the attendees today with a copy of this presentation so that it's a little bit more informative for you. So we hope that you've enjoyed today's webinar and you're able to get some ideas or some examples that you can apply to yourself, your team, your whole company, whatever that may be. If any part of today's presentation resonated with you and you'd like to get a little bit more information on that specific topic or combine a few things or just better understand how you can develop something specific to roll out into your business, feel free to obviously contact me anytime you like. Thank you to the panelists for all of their great info. Without that, it would have just been me boring everyone to death with my banter. So on behalf of everyone who spoke today, thanks for your interest. Look after your people and stay healthy and safe. Cheers.